Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Tuesday, March 14th, 2023, which means we are ready for this week's TNT Tuesday. So something came out not that long ago. It was out here on Twitter. This is actually on Valentine's Day. This gentleman actually put some plans out there on how to create this sort of hand crank mechanism. It's going to kind of resemble Automata a little bit, but we can see that it does have sort of like a little stand to it, and there's an eyelet at the top. There's a crankshaft. There's some beads that make this all sort of work in the physical world. But what we're going to do today is we're going to replicate this using Fusion. All right. So jumping over into Fusion, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna first come out here and create a coil. I'm gonna be picking on this work plane, starting from this origin, and I'm gonna say that we're gonna keep this at 0.1875 for a diameter. And then when we cruise in here, we can see that our section size, we're going to increase that to 0.0625, like a 16th of an inch. And then the height that we're going to use, we're gonna get those a little bit closer together. We're gonna use like 0.13. We can see that we have two revolutions on this. All right, and we need to create this as a new component. So new component has been created. I'm just going to right click on that and go ahead and ground it. Okay, and then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to come out and go to move copy. The move object I'm wanting to grab here is going to be a body. So I'm going to come underneath component, go into my bodies folder. I'm going to pick on this body one. I'm going to create a component, and now I'm going to go ahead and send this over a distance of 2. Okay, so we have that done. And now, obviously, I have a new body out here to use. So I'm going to go to my body and I'm going to create a component from the actual body. Okay. All right. So at this point, this is when we can use an as built joint. Make sure it's a rigid type and we can pick on both of those components. We can see if those are locked in together, and they are. All right. So we're looking pretty good. All right. So now what we're going to do is create the top part of this. This is going to be that eyelet on the top. So we're going to have to, you know, create a path here because we're going to create this as a sweep. But before we get to it, we now have to come in and create a a work plane. So we're going to start a sketch right here on top of this. I'm going to come out, go to project, and I'm going to project this face forward. I want to say okay, okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch. All right, this would be a good point to come out and create an axis. And we're going to create an axis that's perpendicular to a face and then through a point. All right, so we have that axis. And now what we can do is we can construct a plane at an angle. So I'm just going to be picking on this, making sure it's flat in this direction. And now I can go ahead and say, okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is create a sketch, okay, on this plane. I'm going to draw a line starting from this center point, and I'm going to bring this up a distance of 1.5. And then I'm going to draw a line. This is going to come over a distance of 1. We want to be like almost a halfway point between these two different coils that I just created earlier. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put a bend in the wire. So I'm going to say that this fillet is going to be 0.25. All right, and now we can go ahead and finish up with the sketch. We can come out, we can use sweep. We can come here to this face, grab that for a profile, then we can go ahead and select this as a path. Just make sure you are creating that as a new component. And now we're going to say okay. All right, so component number 3 is just floating out there. So let's go ahead and do an as-built joint between this component, okay, and this coil. That's going to be a rigid. We can say okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to be turning on this sketch. All right, and the other thing I'm going to do is come out here and go and turn on this original work plane that I just worked with just a second ago. And now what I'm going to do is create a sketch on that previous work plane. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a circle right here at the end of this. And then I'm also going to be drawing a line. And we are going to dimension this line to the center point of the circle. And that needs to be 0.1875 divided by 2. Okay. And we are setting this up for a revolve. So let's go ahead and finish with the sketch. Let's go ahead and do our revolve. That's our profile. And then our axis is going to be here. And then this would have to be a join. So it's going to join up with that last component. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay. All right. So we have the top of this done. All right. So once that is done, All right, I can come back and turn on this plane again. All right, and the thing is, what we have to think about is that our starting point for that coil, all right, is going to be on the same exact plane as this ending point. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch. Okay, we might have to use a little bit of project geometry here just to get that edge forward. And what I'm going to do is draw a line starting here at this midpoint. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and bring this down. So I'm going to keep a vertical line, and I'm going to say this is going to be coming down 1.5. Okay, I'm going to come in here. If there's nothing that's showing, I can go ahead and project geometry. So let's go ahead and project that forward. And now let's go ahead and draw a line from the midpoint straight down. Okay, make sure that is vertical. And now I can draw a line from here over. And I can do a little bit of trimming here. And now I can start adding my fillets. Okay, so coming up here to fillet, I can come here to the corners and make sure that those are 0.25 for my fillet radius. Okay, so we have those done. All right, at this point, we can go ahead and finish up with the sketch, orbit this over, and now we can go ahead and come in here to do a sweep. Okay, it's going to be this face, and it's going to be this path. Okay, in this case, it's going to be a new component. Okay, it's going to send it all the way around, and now we can go ahead and say okay. All right, so we had the bottom part of our stand. So at this point, let's go ahead and do an as-built joint, make sure it's a rigid, and we are going to connect these two. All right, we're looking good there. And then just for safe measure, let's also go ahead and do an as-built joint between this coil, okay, and this component as well. And now we can say okay. All right, so everything is sort of coming together here. All right, so we have our stand. All right, and then this would be the point when we're going to come out and create that crankshaft. All right, so I'm going to once again come here to construction and turn on. No, I'm not. I'm actually going to come up here to origin. Okay, and I want to make sure to turn on the plane that's going to go right through the center of that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the visibility on there, make sure that my origin is on. Okay, and this is when I can come out and create a sketch right on this work plane. All right, so I had to leave some room for my beads here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it from here. I'm going to go straight down through this. Just make sure you're leaving room for the bead. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring this down. I don't know. Let's see what 1 1/4 looks like. It's probably a little bit much. Okay, I'm just gonna say 1 inch. We're gonna bring that straight down. Okay, this is going to come straight over. Okay, I can track off of that point, and then I can go ahead and send this through. Just making sure that there's enough room for a bead. All right. The other thing I'm going to do at this time is create a crank handle. So starting from here, I can pull this down and then pull this out for our crank handle feature. All right, once again, we can come up here and we can use fillet. I'm going to come to all of my corners and apply those fillets just like so. And I can go ahead and finish the sketch. All right, so once the sketch has been created, what we can do is come out here and create a plane along a path. I can pick on this and I'm going to say that this is going to be 1. So it's going to take it all the way to the end. And then this is when I can create a sketch here. Okay, I can draw my circle starting here at this origin point that's indicating where the end of that path is. And I'm going to say that this once again is 0.0625. I can finish with my sketch. And now I can come out and I can do a sweep of this profile using this as a path. Okay, and there's my crankshaft. All right, crankshaft and handle are all right there. This needs to be a new component. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. All right, so what we have to do is put a joint on this one. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here. I'm going to go into my as-built joint. I'm going to pick on the crankshaft, and then I'm going to pick here on the coil. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a revolute. All right, so that means we're going to get in here close, okay, and we can find this ring that's here. Okay, we can apply that to that, and we can see that those are going to be able to move. All right, so we're looking pretty good there. All right. So what we're going to be doing now is we need to create the last piece of this, and this is going to be the thing that's going to be following the that crankshaft, and it's also going to be going up through the loop. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with this. All right, so let's go ahead and create a coil now. I'm just going to be picking on this work plane. Okay, I can go ahead and pick this to start. This is going to be a 0.1875. It's going to be 0.0625 for my section size, and then my height is going to be 0.13. Going to be 2 revolutions. I think everything is looking good. Now we can go ahead and create this as a new component. Okay, and now we can go ahead and say okay. All right, so what we have to do is we have to actually create a work plane that's going to go down through it. The tricky thing is we don't have a joint origin that we can use in order to create this for it to attach to the actual crankshaft. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in here and talk to this component. I'm going to activate that. Then I can use a work plane and get that work plane somewhat there in the center of this thing. So I'm going to offset a work plane. I'm going to look at this in the front view, and I'm going to be making sure that that work plane is going to be going somewhere here in the center of this. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And then this is the point when I can create a sketch, okay, on that work plane that I have established. I can project this ring here. And then what I can do is I can create a point that's going to be at the dead center of this. We might have to give ourselves some reference geometry. All right, so I'm going to say this is going to come over 0.1875 for my line. And then this is when I can come in and create a point right here at the dead center. Okay, and I can finish with the sketch. All right, so we have some geometry that we can use. At this point, this is when we can come up and we can pick on joint origin. We can come right here to this point in the center, make sure it's laying flat where it's supposed to be, and now I can go ahead and accept that. All right, that's all within that component. Okay, so once we have that done, I'm going to switch back over into my assembly, and I'm going to come up here and use a joint, and I'm going to connect this joint origin to the dead center here to this joint origin, but I need to be making sure that this is going to be a revolute joint. All right, we're looking pretty good there. I'm going to come back in here to position, and what I'm going to be making sure is that this line that's going to be coming out of the coil is going to be lined up pretty close to the center of this. So I might have to just sort of shimmy this over a little bit, just like so. All right, and now we're looking good. So let's go ahead and say okay. All right, so at this point, what we can do is we can do an extrude of this face right here. And I'm going to go ahead and just bring this up. All right, this is going to have to be coming up quite a ways here just to make sure that's going through that loop. All right, and once again, this is going to have to be a join. We say okay on that. All right, and everything is looking like it is exactly where it needs to be. All right, we're looking pretty good there. All right, and then this is where the magic happens. So I'm going to go ahead and just shut down the origin. We're done sort of constructing things. All right, and then obviously this is when we can come out and we can use our tangent relationship. All right, so the tangent relationship is going to happen between the loop and the actual rod. We can see some things sort of shifted there. Let's go ahead and say okay. All right, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to my joints, and I'm going to be looking for the revolute, okay, that's going to be responsible for spinning this. Okay, so revolute 5. I'm just going to give myself a little note here saying crank here. All right, and then this is when we can right click on this and we can animate those joint relationships. All right, and there you go. You have yourself some sort of a wire automata. Okay, lots of great things you could do with this. All right, that one's a tricky one. All right, top-down modeling. There's a lot of features there like coil and sweep, and then making sure we're creating new components using as-builts on the fly. A lot of great stuff, and then finally there at the end, tangent relationship is what is making this happen. All right, so that's a great little project you can do in your class. The beautiful thing is that once things are kind of done with this project, I'm just going to go ahead and save this real quick. Is that who's to say you can't just go into a drawing? We could put this into a drawing. We can just use a front view. All right, and make this a one to one. Okay, we could drop this in and say, okay, we could easily print that out now, and students could actually be using this as a guide, like a bending diagram that they could use in order to create their actual bent wires to make their wire automata. So there you go. Have fun with that. That one's a tricky one. It's a little bit challenging, but I think you're gonna have a fun time with it. I'll see you soon.